Hi there. Welcome to another episode of Mastering the Guitar. My name is Rick Argoza, and I'm here to be of assistance to you to help you just have a few exercises to play and have some kind of guideline or some kind of path to follow, because I've noticed that in dealing with people that can play at all different levels, there's a lot of players who might know a song or be able to strum a few chords or, play a little Mexican. How that from the early days. Play a little, have memorized how to put their fingers in certain places. But on the big scheme of things, it's important that in this process of learning the instrument, that every time you pick it up, you evaluate your posture of both hands, okay? And particularly in the left hand on how the fingers attack the fretboard, because that's the whole key of importance. There's a story that I read in a Guitar Player magazine years ago that Ted Nugent had Van Halen travel with him and back him up. And Ted Nugent is quite an exceptional guitar player. And during one of the warm-ups, he had asked one of the roadies if he could plug into Eddie Van Halen's stack, because Eddie Van Halen's sound and what he does is so incredible and artistic in his expression. And so the roadie plugged Ted Nugent in, and the funny thing is it sounded just like Ted Nugent. And the point of what the author was bringing up in this example was that your sound and your playing and even just the sounds that you're making are all focused to, everything comes down to exactly to the point of the amount of pressure you're applying with the tips of the fingers. It all comes back down to where the fingers attack the string, and with the right hand, with the right hand, the pick or the fingers, so the different sounds you can get out of there. From the kind of piercing that rock type of expression to that clear kind of open tone. So the important thing is that when you're playing, you want to keep a tab of what's going on with both of your hands, how you're positioned over the guitar. If you find yourself playing and getting sore, well, change your back position a little bit, maybe sit a little bit up, using your guitar for support so you're most comfortable and relaxed, okay? So leading on to how you would play is quite simply you're applying pressure to the fretboard, stopping a string in a certain place, okay? Even down to physics that are involved with that is first placing your left hand in a position that would leave your fingers accessible to the neck, and then the fingers, I broke it down to being the most logical and time-saving as possible, minimum movement principles, so that with the left hand, the fingers curve around, and then when they're actually in play mode, they don't need to move any more than what's necessary, okay? There's no need to be lifting your hands and your fingers just way off. This is the playing area. Just keep it in that basic area. So focusing on posture is a big key in successfully learning how to play the guitar. And again, not thinking of this in a 2-week frame or a 6-month frame, but think of it in a year from now, just by just humbling yourself a little bit and just being diligent with the basic exercise and exercises, and let your body just adapt to this instrument, work with it. And before you know it, those obstacles are those little kind of like they're little walls of how to play faster, and they just disappear. And you've got to, you just open this. I've noticed a more and more fluent relationship with the instrument. The licks are smoother, and it isn't so much of a stress to play. And actually, for me, because I try to keep it regular, the warm-up time doesn't take as long, and my hands are almost, ready to, okay, well, if I need to just grab my guitar and go play somewhere, I'm pretty much ready to do that, okay? And that all comes down to just having an attitude of monitoring your hands and knowing what they're going to do and expecting them to do certain things when I need them, okay? And that comes down to practice and what you do in your practice. So at this episode, we're working on the melody part of this phase. What we've looked at is the chords and basic harmony for the first 5 keys. And now we've started with the last episode into this one, as we've been airing these sequentially. Eventually they'll be at random and you'll just pick up on it. There's paperwork that involves, all of this stuff is written on paper so that you can mail in and get yourself a copy so it all becomes clear to you, and actually that you have supplement in front of you that you can see where your fingers go. I've been trying to just cram the tapes and keep it flow going and just fill them up, so keep them recording and get yourself a collection of them, and you'll have that data there for you. The important thing at this stage is pretty much looking at what we're doing and what's happening here. Music is broken down into, say, a couple of general components. You've got some type of rhythm structure, whatever the drummer's doing or whatever it might be that's percussion is. You've got some type of rhythm structure, okay? It can be a jazzy thing, it can be kind of a calypso. Making sounds. Okay, combining the sounds that give us that type of impression. So whatever the percussion is doing in there, you've got a type of rhythm, or you would have a harmony breakdown, whether the piano or the whatever instruments. It can be a whole horn section, but they're playing certain notes of the triad, okay, or of the major scale to produce certain voicings. So harmony is the type of rhythm you hear in the background or what's going on, just that strumming. Okay, that basic harmony, a collection of notes producing a voicing. Okay, now a way of looking at another component, a general component, is a form of a melody line, or a term has been referred to with guitar players in the way they practice as an arpeggio. An arpeggio is a broken chord. You've got a full chord here. Watching and counting which fret I'm on. I'm in the 5th position, which is an A chord. I'm playing a full bar chord, which we will get into, and not too long from now. Okay, or an arpeggio is a broken chord. Okay, and that's just taking the basic chords, notes of the chord, and playing them single line, okay, melody type. So using that as our structure here, you've got a harmony section that's producing the type of rhythm and harmony, the sounds of the chords, and then you've got a melody line section, or the solo section, or a lot of times it's referred to in like the music business as a hook or the phrase, okay? And so with that, it's usually compiled of single strings or something that you can hum along with, you know, just some kind of simple melody that follows. Now you combine these two together, and this is pretty much what's the underlying components of the songs and what we're listening to in the music that we hear on the radio and whatever you're tuning into. Because really what it comes down to is the expression and what kind of clothes that the musicians wear. You can remove all that and break everything back down to analyzing the sounds. And literally the way that I've taken it and the way that my process of thinking works is back to numbers. Every sound has a relevant number, and when you know your major scale, that number framework becomes the key to relating to the instrument and then how you express yourself. All the numbers, like I was and will be explaining, a flat third has that flat third sound. Whatever octave you're playing it in. Okay? Same thing with a major third. Okay? You can hear when it's out. All right? So that focusing on the numbers is the whole key to cutting through what this music thing is all about. Okay? So last week we looked at the key of C, all right, and this week we're looking at the key of G. So in this process, the first thing that we're going to look at is the major scale in the key of G, okay? Well, now how you do that is, first off, you have to find the root note for the key of G, where your 1 is, where your root note is, where the starting point is, where a G is, okay? And to cut through this, we find a G right on the 3rd fret of the top string, the 6th string, okay? And that becomes our root note. So what we'll do now is quickly play through the major scale so that we can just clear out the cobwebs and get used to the area that we're playing in now, which is the key of G, okay? There's the G major scale. You can sing do, re, mi's. For those of you out there who are into singing or playing any other instrument, play along with the keys. Okay? If you're singing la's and t's and da's and do's, all these different frameworks, ah's, sing along. Okay? And it's pretty much a universal understanding of warming up with scales, okay? If you don't want to do this, that's a choice you have to make, but this is how it's done. This is how you work your way through getting to be able to play this thing, okay? So from there, we have some questions to ask. First off, we're using the 1-4-5 cadence, okay? So we need to know right now then, what is the 1-4-5 in the key of G, okay? So to recap, what's taking place here is, first off, the key of G. What determines the root note for that, okay? Well, the rule is that the key that you're in occupies or is the same name, okay? So in the key of G, we start with the G note. So we've got our G, okay? Now in the musical alphabet, A to G, it repeats itself. So with that, we can go A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Goes back to A again. Just keeps going round and round, all right? So we've got a G, A, B, C is the 4th digit. Simple as counting out in your hand, okay? Or your foot if you like using your toes. And 5 is a thumb. So we've got G, A, B, C, and D. So the 1-4-5 in the key of G is G, C, and D, okay? So remember that. Write that down even. G, C, and D. So now we go back to where our G is, and that's our 1, okay? So it is as simple as this by counting out the major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's our C note, and that's where our 4th will be located. Our root note for the 4th just happens to be right underneath the root note for the 1. 1, 4, and 5 is 2 frets higher. G, C, and D. And so that's the shape. That actually, this particular shape should be embedded in your memory system, because no matter what root note you start on the top string, that shape will always be the same. It'll always be a 1, 4, 5. Okay? So now those become our tonal centers for the melody line that we're going to be adding. Okay? Now this melody line is called the boogie pattern. And it is, for obvious reasons, called the boogie pattern because it sounds like the old boogie pattern. The boogie pattern and literally every other sound that we can hear in our audible range has a corresponding tension or content note in relation to the root of whatever key that it's in, okay? The boogie pattern formula, or the pattern, is 1, 3, 5, 6, flat 7, okay? Now if that still sounds foreign to you, don't worry about it, because the number system as you work with it becomes clearer and clearer, and you might be one of those that just one day it'll just break through and all of a sudden it seems really clear. But the number system relates to the master pattern. You play your major scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, okay? Now when you're playing sequences like the boogie pattern, then you're extracting the notes from the major scale to produce the melody that you're playing, okay? The formula was 1, 3, 5, 6, and flat 7. Major 7th is here, flat 7 means you lower it a half step, okay? Okay, and with the right hand, as you'll notice, I'm using an alternate picking technique, which is down, up, down, up. It's like a walking type of technique. Down, up. Alternate picking, okay? You can eventually get a lot more faster with that. Speed really is maximized when you use this alternate picking technique, okay? Down, up, alternate. So 1, 3, 5, 6, flat 7 in the key of G. Okay? Now we have the 1, 3, 5, 6, flat 7 in the key of C, okay? Well, sorry, not the key of C, in the C, which is actually, it's strangely kind of a slip like that because it is the same notes in the key of C, but now we're playing the C in the key of G, and the C is no longer the root of C, it's the fourth of G, okay? Believe it, it's true. So playing the 1, 2, 3, 4, the fourth of G, now we get the boogie pattern in on the C root note. And so the formula is 1, 3, 5, 6, flat 7. 1, 3, 5, 6, flat 7. Okay? Now 2 frets higher is our 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? And that is our D. G, C, and D. G, C, and D. Okay? And from our D note, we play the 1, 3, 5, 6, flat 7. Okay? And that's the outline of where you would play the 1, 4, 5 boogie pattern. Okay? Now I'm going to quickly just play it in the order of the pattern. Usually go back to the 4 to the 1, then to the 5. And then usually we'll have kind of a little ending tail on that, okay? And that's an example of training yourself to be able to play a melody line along a type of structured cadence, a 1, 4, 5, okay? So this was done in the key of G. And in the next 3 episodes, we'll be looking at the D, A, and E keys on where to play the boogie pattern. And at the end of that, we'll spend a couple of sessions on just how they combine themselves, and really, there is no forgiveness in music. The best way to explain this is that when the chord C is played, the bass player, the piano player, even the drummer should be thinking of a C chord, okay? And when it comes time for it to change to A minor or F or G or whatever chord it's going to, everybody who's playing that piece of music with the band plays the change at the same time. It's not like one can change whenever he feels like it. And that's what noise is all about. Random sounds that have no structured rhythm, okay? So a very important part of learning to play the guitar is getting your thinking in line with this, that you can hear the phrases, you can hear the sections. When you're listening to music, start analyzing the tunes, that you can hear the one section. And you can hear the 4 section. See that each time you change, there's a type of tension that's created from a 1, 5 stretches it that much, 4 isn't so much of a stretch, and these sounds and this type of shape, they create a tension. So you can recognize that. Begin to let your body and your hearing tell you, oh yeah, that guy's playing that, okay? Start analyzing in your thinking what the melody player might be doing. Try to pick out where the root note is. The classic example I like to use is songs like when you hear that song, Every Breath You Take, the song is broken down in certain sections that make it really easy for you, the listener. That's a 1, 6, 4, 5. Okay, that example is a 1, 6, 4, 5. So you just pick out the key that you're playing it in, isolate what your 1, 6, 4, 5 is.